Hi, everyone. I am here with Nikki Guo, Regional Product Manager at Mastercard, and we're here to talk to you about some of the challenges that women have when it comes to business, how Mastercard is doing something to do with it, and how this all help the ecosystem. So, hi, Nikki, welcome.
Hello, hi Julia. Excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So, first of all, tell me a little bit more about your role at Mastercard and how Mastercard works to help women.
Okay, firstly, a bit of self-introduction. I'm a commercial product manager in Mastercard and part of the team that is looking after the SME portfolio. So we work on solutions that aim to resolve some of the small businesses pain points that they face, such as like getting access to working capital, helping SMEs digitize their business processes, providing them with like low cost card acceptance solutions, and of course, giving them access to finance and cash flow management through cards and credit terms. So I'm really excited to be here, and thanks Julia for inviting me. And as a woman, I'm happy to be part of the conversation about our community. Yeah, maybe I'll touch on a bit more about like how Mastercard, is of help to small businesses and especially women-owned small businesses. So it is part of Mastercard's company vision to support female-owned female entrepreneurs and also to provide 25 million. That's our target. Yeah, 25 million women entrepreneurs with solutions that can help them to grow their businesses through a range of like initiatives across funding, mentoring, and also development of inclusive technologies. Yep.
That's really interesting, and I think everyone would be interested to know more about what those are. But before we talk about the solution, can you tell me more about what do you think are some of the common challenges that women specifically face when it comes to running small and medium enterprises?
Yeah. So as we all know, right, running a small business is tough, and to expand it, to grow the business is also tougher. And if you are a woman in business, sometimes the odds stacked against you are really pretty high, and it makes it even tougher still. So when we look at the challenges that women-owned SMEs face, they are generally not too different from the challenges commonly faced by other businesses. But women business owners face certain distinct constraints in getting access to like working capital. There's also like institutional barriers for certain countries, and also social capital limitations, and yeah, cultural expectations, and so on. Yeah, so maybe just to touch on a bit more about what are the specific barriers in terms of like then getting access to working capital. Globally, women SMEs only receive about like 5% of overall small business loans, and 70% of women-owned small businesses with credit needs are generally underserved, yeah, or unserved. Yeah, and that is especially so for women businesses in developing economies. Yeah, and without all this access to working capital, it's hard for them to grow and expand the business to the next level.
Of
So
course.
take for example in India, like 90% of women entrepreneurs ended up staying in like micro category, and they have to rely on their family or like informal lenders for financing. Yeah, and one of the reasons is that some of these organizations, they too openly discriminate against female entrepreneurs seeking a loan without a male relative as a co-signer. Yeah, for example. Yeah, and another bottleneck is that they require property collateral. Yeah, to take out a loan, and very few women in India like own land or collaterals that which further reduce their access to taking up bank loans or financing from banks. Yeah.
Of course, and as far as I know that even in Singapore, it's not really that easy for women and men to access credit because the what you need to have is you need to have at least $30,000 in either cash or assets to access a loan from a bank, for example, or from a traditional institution, which is something that for a young person or maybe someone who doesn't have a lot of assets, it's actually quite a pretty significant amount, which then makes it really, really hard to access credit, for example, even for small amounts, even if you wanted to borrow, say, $500 because you have an emergency. So the issue is not just in India, I think, and in other developing countries, but even in a place like Singapore, it's not really that easy to access credit, for example.
Yeah. And I believe a lot of this, like women-owned businesses, like in certain countries, right, they are still transacting mostly in cash.
Exactly.
So the lack of digital footprint of like these transactions that's going on, right, makes it even harder because they lack the data that banks will require in terms of accessing their credit worthiness for them to get access to loans. So leaving them unable to acquire the capital that they need to purchase like inventory and take their business to the next level, and they're pretty stuck there.
Yeah. So how is Mastercard tackling this specifically? Because you mentioned earlier on about how you're involved in the product team that aims to solve these challenges, right? So is there an existing tool that Mastercard has, or can you share something that you're working on maybe?
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting because what Mastercard did was really a lot of different initiatives that's launched worldwide. So there's maybe like two levels to it. Upfront funding is one of them. So a good example of what Mastercard does is their partnership with Fearless Fund in United States. Yeah, so they have a joint mission to help support Black women entrepreneurs specifically with grants, mentorship, and tools to help them, to thrive in digital economy. Yeah, like what I mentioned, a lot of them are still transacting in cash, and Black women-owned businesses, they receive like maybe like 1% of like venture capital funding on an overall level, and that's really very low. So through this partnership, they are awarding like small businesses across the states with $10,000 grants, digital tools to help them, sustain their businesses online. Yeah, and also like a one-on-one mentorship, from Mastercard, so that they can continue to like grow their businesses. And on another level, other than providing funding, Mastercard also work to solve the issue of how some of these small businesses that are women owned, that they are unable to get access to credit. Due to the lack of like collateral or credit history, like we mentioned just now. So in Kenya, Mastercard partner with Unilever, I'm sure everybody's familiar with them, to develop a new platform for micro businesses to overcome cash constraints and get access to credit. So they use data provided by Unilever to have a gauge of how much like inventory a store has bought from Unilever over time. So they use this data to give microcredit eligibility recommendation to a bank in Kenya. I believe it was KBC, KCB. Yeah. So this solves the problem that banks, they require formal credit history in order or collateral to grant loans. Yeah. So like
Wow.
female businesses can borrow from them easily without having to borrow from like informal lenders at high interest rates. Yeah, and trapping them in a cycle of debt.
Oh, wow. That's really, really interesting. And do you think that the situation has gotten better or worse with COVID? Because I would argue that with COVID, a lot of the digitalization process has been accelerated in theory, but then in practice, what's your opinion on that? Or what does the data say, since I know you have access to lots of it?
Like COVID has been terrible, right? It's basically changed all parts of our lives, not just
pretty
small
much.
businesses. So we are all victims of that pandemic. Yeah. So we did a business impact survey, and we realized that women-led businesses are, I would say, impacted more strongly because of COVID-19 as compared to male-led firms. And this is, I think, part of the reason that contributed to this is that women-owned businesses tend to operate within sectors that are heavily impacted. For example, retail and services. Yeah, it just happened. It just happened to be so, and they have like greater financial constraints because of that. But through our study, we also realized that I think on a positive note, the nature of like smaller businesses allows them to be more versatile and adaptable in a way. Yeah, when they are impacted by COVID compared to large businesses, because the requirement for less, because they require less operating capital. Yeah. So in fact, women-owned like businesses, female entrepreneurs, they're accustomed to like marginalization in terms of access to business funding and are confronted with more social cultural constraints. So they tend to be more resourceful when it comes to facing challenges. And all these like traits, all these qualities of like female entrepreneurs, like give them more drive to be more innovative in terms of diversifying their product offerings and services. Yeah, in order to like suit the needs of like consumers during the pandemic. Yeah.
For sure. And I think, unfortunately, it's not really something that most women have a choice to be, right? Because
Yeah.
especially with women having to carry the majority of the child caring or caring for other family members, I would
Yes.
say that this is, obviously this is a great plus that women have those skills and that multitasking and resourcefulness. But I think there's also a big unfortunately, because there's no choice really for a lot of women out there, which
Yes.
is also what I think makes it harder for women to have a successful and long career, especially. So obviously the situation is different in a lot of countries, so we can't really just make a blanket statement. But from what I've seen from my personal experience, just looking at the friends and mothers around me, I see how challenging it is. So do you have any career advice for women specifically based on your experience?
Wow. I think I'm quite young to give out career advice, to be honest, at this stage. But I do interact with a lot of like female business owners. A lot of my peers are also like, female entrepreneurs themselves. And also there's also like a group that's called WLN in Mastercard. Yeah, it's a network basically for like female leaders within the company to interact and learn from each other, which I truly appreciate. So I do learn a lot from them. And I think a piece of advice that they would always share with me is really to just be yourself and have confidence. Um, in fact, they recommended a book to me that's called Brave But Not Perfect, because I think that is kind of like what a lot of women face. They tend to be perfectionists. I don't know about you guys, but I have the habit of like rereading what I type in an email 2-3 times before I send them out.
Oh
And
yes.
yes, rereading and rereading over again, making sure there's no like grammatical error. But I mean, that is a good trait. Yeah, that is a good trait. But sometimes it also like hinders us in terms of like, time and work and so on and so forth. Yeah. So really just be, I guess, not be afraid of failure. Yeah. Yeah. So these are like pieces of advice that are really, given to me throughout my working career. Yeah. From friends, from leaders.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for sharing. And so, one last thing that I want to say before we wrap things up is how happy we are to be basically partnering with Mastercard, since all of the Lucy card are on the Mastercard circuit. And something that I want to share, which we've recently launched, is how we have a rewards program. So it's similar to other credit card rewards programs, except instead of getting 0.1% cash back on your purchases or 5 points at the Shell or at the gas station, what we do is that we have created this rewards program to benefit other women, which I think is quite new. I've never seen this done before, and it's why we're so excited to be launching this and pioneering this, so that basically people can use their spending towards maybe like the community and benefiting other women. For example, one of the rewards that we have is new baking equipment for a home baker, which in a way touches on the whole like working capital challenges and the challenges of growing your business and going past being a micro entrepreneur. So, well, thank you, Mastercard, I guess, for doing this with us. And yeah, well, thank you, Nikki, for sharing your experience with us today. Do you have any final words that you would love every man and woman in Singapore to know?
Well, thanks for having me, Julia. Really happy to be here to share about like what Mastercard has been doing and what bring awareness to what are the challenges faced by female entrepreneurs, women-owned small businesses around the world, and hope that this will bring more awareness. And of course, shout out to Lucy, for making capital accessible to like women in Singapore. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nikki.
Thanks, Julia.